Okay, there we go. Okay, so the agenda of this meeting, as you see today, starts with introducing with the PCG and then moving on to other agenda items. I will not really be talking for another 3 minutes, but let's just move on to what PCG is all about. Right. PCG stands for Policy Coordination Group. That is the full form of this PCG. If you've been hearing this term a lot, so Policy Coordination Group it is. So what does this do? Is that's a huge answer, which is what each and every person over this whole session will be explaining to you. So I'm not really going to do much of that. So basically, all of you are members of the Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP and the UN Environment Assemblies process. And this is a voluntary process. No, everybody comes in their own time, whenever it's possible and suitable for them, and then they come together. And then one thing is that the whole process is consensus based. So there's no, it's not really a voting system where someone, whether ones with higher votes or anything in terms of deciding if we have to record the session to, let's say, having a paragraph in the statement that we are delivering, right? Everything is consensus based. That's one. And then what we also do is track meetings and get involved and participate in meetings. So what I mean when I say track meetings is that there are processes that we follow, which people will explain more in detail, which is how we do that. We participate in those meetings, and before we participate in those meetings, we prepare for those meetings. So that's really what we do. But I think it's really vague when I say all of this, but I think it hopes, but I hopefully guess this whole session will give you a more overview on all of that. Yeah, over to you, Mario and Mia.
Thank you so much, Santir, and please forgive me for not having my video on. I'm using my phone, so it's a bit difficult. So we're going to talk about the governing bodies and the structure and the processes. And next slide, please. Next slide, please.
And the current one is showing the governance structure. You want me to move?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, they've moved. Thank you. Mm-hmm. No, we are good. We are good. So, in terms of the structure of the UNEP governance structure, we have UNER, which is the United Nations Environmental Assembly. Then we also have the UNEA Bureau. We have the Committee of Permanent Representatives, which is the CPR. We have also the CPR Bureau, which is like their governing body of their CPR. Then we have the open-ended CPR and their annual subcommittee meeting. So I will delve into all this, the various different entities within this particular structure, and let you know more how they each work, they each function. So we'll start with, we'll go to the UNER, the UNEA Bureau. If you move to the next slide, please. So we'll notice that, for instance, the UNEA, the United Nations Environmental Assembly, it was established in Rio in 2012. So, and it was established as a sort of like a organ entity to be able to consult and deliberate on environmental matters. And since then, we've had various United Nations Environmental Assemblies, with the last one being last year in February. So you'll find that some of the key functions of the UNER are setting the global environmental agenda, reviewing policy and exchanging experiences, mostly member states and the various stakeholders that are involved with these processes, setting the strategic guidance on the future directions of UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program, fostering partnerships, and also organizing various multi-stakeholder meetings and sessions. So it's essentially what you also understand with UNER, it's held after every 2 years. And normally it's between the last week of February. So the last year we had it twice between, I think, if I'm not wrong, the 6th and the 20, sorry, if I'm not wrong, we had it twice the end of February, this is the 15th and 17th and 25th and 25th. And the next UNER, which will be the 6th session, will be in 26th February to between 26th and 1st March 2024. So you can move to the next slide, Mario. So as we move forward, you'll notice that, as I said, the UNER also has a UNEA bureau, and the UNEA bureau is typically, like you'd say, like sort of like the governing body of UNER. And before I continue all that, there are key strategic differences between the UNEP Governing Council and the UNER Assembly. So in terms of membership, you'll notice that the Governing Council of UNEP has 58 elected members. These members are elected from the General Assembly, which in most cases comprises of all the accredited member states and almost, I think, all the United Nations member states that are credited to UNEP. So out of those, they select a key member that forms the governing council of UNEP. And in terms of the bureau, which is the governing body for each of their specific entities, you'll find the governing council for the UNEP has 5 members, which we'll discuss towards the end. And for UNER, which I'll get into shortly, has 10 members. And the UNER, as I said, it meets every 2 years, and it's preceded by the open-ended CPR meetings, which we shall also delve into when you're talking about the Committee of Permanent Representatives meetings and all that. So this is, and with all this, the objective of each and every entity of this organization is to be able to, for instance, for their governing council, is to come up with decisions and outcomes that are decided by their member states. And when it comes to UNER, the key outcomes that come from there are resolutions, because at the end of the day, you'll find that member states negotiate resolutions, they come up with decisions, and any other thing within that particular framework that they feel is needed to accomplish the specific agenda that were set for that specific meeting. Okay, so so in terms of the governing council, you find that the governing council essentially was the governing council, when it was established, it was more so to help chart the work of the United Nations Environmental Program. But this was stated, this was right at the beginning, once the UNER was established in 2013, and it functioned all the way up until 2014, when the governing council was replaced by UNER as the governing body, to be able to undertake some of the responsibilities, the key functions that I mentioned earlier on, such as setting the strategy, the guidance, and all this. So you'll find there's something that as their UNEP grows and becomes bigger, they also are able to change and diversify and see what works and what doesn't work. So you'll find that also a fundamental change, a difference when it comes to the governing council and the UNER itself. So as we move forward, we'll talk about the bureau, which is the next slide, and the UNER bureau. And the UNER bureau is comprised of, is comprised, as I said, of 10 members, and out of these 10 members, the chairmanship or the chairpersonship, sorry, is always by a member of their African group. You have one president, and you have 8 vice presidents and 1 rapporteur. The current president, as you know, is Her Excellency Mrs. Leila Ben Ali, who's from Morocco and is currently chairing the bureau at the moment. So as you can see, most of them, the rest are also from other regions. Well, the other 5 regions represented within the UN. So that's just the composition of the bureau. And you also notice that the bureau itself also comprises not only of their member states, also their specialized agencies of the United Nations. Sorry, no, not the bureau, sorry. The bureau is just this particular 10 representatives who essentially make the decisions for sort of like chart the forward for their assembly, and they're elected at their final meeting or the final session of each of their meeting. For instance, the last open-ended CPR you'll find that if there is a new group that takes office, then they're elected at that particular session, and they help to oversee the preparations of the next UNEA. Like for instance, now they're going to oversee the UNEA 6, and they also support the general conduct of any of their business of UNEA. So as we move forward, I also say that the most of the bureau meetings, you'll notice they're always headed by the president, and the decisions of this bureau are taken by consensus, and the chair will always participate in all. The chair of the CPR sometimes participates in the bureau of the UNEA as an ex-office bearer, meaning that he may not necessarily vote on certain things, but is able to participate in and oversee some of the discussions that are happening. So it's a bit, when you're talking about UNEP, there's literally a lot more to say also in terms of like its own structure, how it goes about when the sessions are held. For instance, like last year, you'd have like there's usually the opening segment, these national statements are made, there's a leadership and dialogue session, a multi-stakeholder dialogue, high-level segments and all of this. But I think just for the purposes of time, I'll just limit it to just the skeleton outline as it were, such that at a future forum, we can delve into now how the whole process of UNEA goes, the various specific outfits of it. So as we move forward, we'll move to the CPR, their Committee of Permanent Representatives. And the membership of the Committee of Permanent Representatives is mostly it's composed of UN member states of specialized agencies, the European Union, and all of which have to be accredited to UNEP. And you'll also notice that sometimes there's also, we have observers, for instance, like the League of Arab States, as well as the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, if I'm not wrong. And currently, for the CPR, we have 85 accredited missions inside of Nairobi and 39 accredited missions outside of Nairobi. So for the CPR, it's the Committee of Permanent Representatives is essentially a subsidiary intersectional body for formal consultations with with governments that are represented at the UN, the UNEP, and also the executive director. So the CPR in and of itself was established in May of 1985, and it came out of a decision that necessitated the need to, they found that there was a need to have like a formal forum where governments could directly interact and also be able to engage with the executive director on matters, on UNEP matters, essentially. So you also, as I said, also as I said previously, it's led by a bureau of 5 members, and with a chair, 3 vice chairs, and the rapporteur. The current chair comes from the Western European region, and the bureau itself meets at least 4 times, meets regularly 4 times in a year, and sometimes they have like extraordinary CPR meetings. And when they have these extraordinary CPR meetings, they have to be done in consultation with the bureau, or if there's if 5 member states, for instance, move and feel they need to have an extraordinary meeting, then this will be this will sort of like come forth. As well as during these meetings, it's always this full interpretation so that all members can participate. This is in stark contrast to the informal subcommittee meetings, which we'll get into shortly, which are mostly conducted in only English. So the CPR, when we go to...
Marlene?
Sorry, go ahead.
Just want to remind you of the time. We're a bit over time at this point, and we need to move on to the other agenda item. All right.
Okay, 2 more minutes and I'm done. Just the CPR and the subcommittee meetings. Is that okay?
Okay, please, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so when you get to the OSCPR, open-ended CPR, as I mentioned before, the open-ended CPR, it meets for 5 days, and it's always held after every 2 years. After every it meets for 5 days And it normally comes either back to back with you after 5 days, and as a general practice, it is conducted after UNEP, most often after UNEP, and it's also chaired by the CPR, and it's sort of like a pre-committee for whereby they discuss the preparations for the upcoming UNEP. And lastly, when I talk about the subcommittee meeting, as I mentioned, is the informal meeting of the CPR, whereby most of the meetings are conducted in English, and it's most of its function is mainly to review and sort of provide oversight for the current midterm strategy and program of work for the UN. Yeah, more details later. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for this very interesting presentation. Shall we continue for the next agenda item? Or okay. Thank you. So the next agenda item is to tell you of how you can get engaged about this CPR meetings and the UNEA process, and how can we as youth be a voice and engaged in this. So definitely before passing to the phase of advocacy and policy making, we should definitely start by administrative procedures. And here we have with us Ahmed, who's going to tell us what are the steps to undertake in order to register and be part of such.
Sorry. Just a bit. Let me go back to check that. I think Ugratna is going to do a CPR based review, as you can see right now, and then we'll go to Ahmed.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think Ugratna will go into more details at this point in time, and then we can just hand over to Ahmed.
Santhia, Mario, should I go ahead?
Oh, yes,
okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I'll try to cover this, colleagues, in the 5 minutes that were there. And the reason I didn't put this in Canva was because we had a lot of text, and sometimes adding text in Canva can be tricky. And I'll share this PPT. I think Santhia has a copy already, and then it can be shared with the rest of the PCG. So just, very quickly looking at what is called as the CPR based review, because you'll be hearing this term many times over the course of the next year. They will refer to this, and so I wanted to provide a little bit of what it is and what you can do in order to make sure that some of the advocacy is proactive from the PCG side. And in a nutshell, I mean, Maureen has already covered this in much detail, so there is really no need for this slide because it was excellently covered by her. But this is to highlight that, both UNEA, CPR, and subcommittee meetings that you have, they always have constant improvements that they want to do within the context of their work. So for instance, obviously you have, and how are improvements adopted? So subcommittee meetings of CPR. So CPR convenes as CPR itself, which happens every quarter. So 4 times in a year. And then this is CPR as a body has the ability to adopt decision of previous CPRs and subcommittees, and they can also recommend decision for like final adoption at UNEA itself. So I think this is an important part to highlight, that CPR has the ability to refer the decisions to UNEA, whereas subcommittee meetings are more of a discussion space and see where the consensus is. And then when they have these bigger CPR meetings every 3 months or 4 months is when they can recommend decisions for adoption at UNEA, or take a decision and it's sort of final, then it goes to UNEA for final decision making. So I think what is important to highlight is that between 2019 to 2022, or you can even say second half of until 2021, there was a process undertaken by member states about how the proceedings of the CPR and of course thereby UNEA can be further strengthened and improved. This process was called as the CPR based review, or also called as the consensual process for review by the Committee of Permanent Representatives. So this is more sort of a formal term that you will read in the documents, whereas CPR based review is how they call it. This was of course happening a lot of this happened even before we had a steering committee, because we had steering committee towards end of 2020. So important point to highlight is that during 2019 and 2020, Youth Major Group through PCG and some other working groups that were there were quite involved in the whole discussion, and we made interventions. We're pushing for a lot of things even then. And you can read the outcomes that were there. It's a several page long document, and once we share the PPT, you can go through that document. So where are we at? And this is quite important in the sense that maybe not all of the recommendations, and obviously we want to take all recommendations on equal importance, but some of them might be more important to the youth constituency. So I think, so there were, I think, 11 main outcomes of the CPR based review. The first one was that UNEA theme is guides the political debate and preparations of the draft resolution. So often in the past, UNEAs, what we have seen is that they have a theme for UNEA, but you would only see a ministerial declaration along the theme. So for example, in UNEA 4, the theme was on plastics, and then there was a ministerial declaration on plastics, but there was no other really connecting issues on plastics that were then discussed. So theme became more like a fancy title as opposed to substantive discussion. So this is something that they agreed on, that UNEA theme should also draft provide a little bit of draft resolution on this. And as you know that there is a and GFPs can share more with you, but there is a UNEA bureau retreat at the end of this month where I think MGFC will join, and they will take the decision on final theme. There is already a theme that has been proposed. Then the other thing that was discussed was, now this is quite important to also realize, that UNEA dates were never fixed in the past, and they actually are not still. Sometimes UNEAs have taken in May, sometimes in November, sometimes in February. And OECPR was also something that was negotiated, that OECPR should, when should it be? So what they did and decided was that OECPR will always be back to back with UNEA. OECPR is a CPR meeting which is open-ended in nature, which means it does not conclude, but it hands over its work to UNEA. That's why it's open-ended in nature. So this is something that they had finalized. So there'll be less sort of drama on, when the OECPR should be. I think the drama would only be when UNEA, should be. And the next dates are already set for OECPR is 19th to 23rd Feb, which is same as the date, we had in UNEA 5.2 or similar. And then, of course, there was some general reaffirmation of role of the CPR and its role in the UNEA process and so on. If you look at the next, part. I think an important part is that we talked about close cooperation between the two bureaus, which Maureen already explained. So it should not be operating in isolations and their joint meetings, but they've always been there. So they would simply continue. So this is, and then number 5 may be relevant for you to know, which is more of that they said that we don't want too many events, like and this is, I'm speaking from a personal capacity now, for the next 10 seconds, like COPs, for example, have become a carnival, right? The negotiations, so those of you that may be in Sharm el Sheikh must have realized what happening at the other corner of the venue, and then the main sort of area where you enter, you had all the pavilions and side event rooms and other things. And in order to sort of preempt that happening in UNEA, so it was decided that there will be a balance between negotiation session and events that would happen in UNEA. So not like we want just events or just full of negotiations. So this is something that they had decided. And I'm saying this because I want you all to remember this when you advocate for UNEA 6, that this is something that countries have already decided. The point number 6, or sort of the outcome number 6, was about strengthened cooperation from MEAs. So this is something that they're still discussing. And you would hear about this where they want the MEAs like climate change, biodiversity, desertification, and others to also sort of contribute to UNEA through a leadership dialogue, essentially. And this, one of these happened in UNEA 5.2. It was a bit low key, but they're trying to have something, as an item in the UNEA 6 agenda to have a strengthened contribution from MEAs. And you would hear discussions about this. And I think it would be important for Youth Major Group to support this, because the last thing we want in the UN system is isolation, that climate change convention is doing its own work. It's not really linked to what UNEA is doing and so on. So I think there is a document that will be presented by ED at the next CPR meeting, not this one, but I think at one point of time, maybe in February. So you may want to look at that and see how you want to have coherence on some of these topics. Now, let me go through a little bit fast. So 7, 8, and 9 outcomes, one of them was on regional level, which, we have been working quite strongly on already. We have had regional focal points and we have engaged in regional youth forums and other things. Outcome 8 was the science policy interface at UNEA, which is handled through GEO process and the Science Policy Business Forum, in which I believe the constituency is also involved. And then the other thing was that the CPR based review also reaffirmed participation of major groups and stakeholders again. And this is something that we were, asking a lot for, because they wanted to delete that paragraph. And we said, no, you have to mention this even when there is a sort of a role of major groups, but we also want you to strengthen it again. So, and the Secretariat is responsible for trainings and briefings. So make sure that they organize trainings and briefings, including if you want them to talk to youth, for instance, and talk about UNEA, that is something they should, be able to do. Then this 10, 11, and 12 are more like generic and administrative in nature, that, they want to have meeting decisions and minutes of CPR meetings in time. So not like, oh, you're announcing a meeting 2 days before and then, everybody has to rush down to Nairobi. And then similarly for remote participation, which became a huge sort of a concern during COVID time. And then a little bit more on having more member states to become UNEP accredited, because UNEA is universal in nature. And as Maureen exactly mentioned, we have 85 in Nairobi and 39 outside that are accredited to CPR. And 124 member states are totally, accredited. And so this is something that they had discussed. Now, concluding this very quickly. So this is also something quite important, the parts that I've marked in red. So they have agreed on a timeline of UNEA, oh, yeah. Okay, yes, Bangura, sure. Yeah, so they have agreed on timeline of negotiating UNEA resolutions, which means that earlier there was no specific timeline as to when the resolutions can be submitted and when the negotiations on that can begin, which often led to some countries coming, just a week before UNEA and saying, oh, we want a resolution on XYZ. So what they did was they have said that resolutions should be tabled at least 12 weeks in advance of UNEA. So now you have a timeline that that countries will be tabling. That's when the countries will start tabling the resolutions. And then the annual subcommittee, which happens once in a year, should have, a discussion on how to merge the resolutions that have been tabled. So if the resolutions are similar in topics, how can they be merged? How can they be separate? And those kind of things. But this is something that was mandated, but it's of course not, like compulsory, but it is kind of, because obviously countries, if they want, they can come 1 week before UNEA and say we have another resolution, but it's discouraged because they themselves agreed to establish a timeline of 12 weeks in advance. And then one thing you may want to note is that the UN Secretariat is preparing a handbook for UNEA delegates with the aim to be finalized and published, but I really don't think they have published it. In November, they just had a content outline. So they have a lot of work to do. I don't think it's actually published. And so you may want to look into this. So now, just very quickly on emerging issues for your consideration, because I, of course, I may not be joining as many CPR meetings or PCG meetings as I used to. So I just want to highlight some points that you may want to look into the upcoming few months, at least the first quarter or the first few months. So one thing that we have been pushing for really strongly is youth participation at the bureau meetings. So as you know, the CPR Bureau and UNEA Bureau are just for member states, but in the CPR based review outcome, if you read it in more detail, there has been a provision provided that it is up to the chair to invite more experts to join the bureau meetings. And I think it would be quite important if youth can join, not all, but some of them. So let's say we want once in 4 months, once in 3 months, we want youth to update at a bureau meeting of what they're doing, what their plans are. And this is something you are within your rights to ask. I mean, they can say no, but you are within your rights to ask the chair. And last time we talked with them, they said that we cannot do it for every meeting, but we can try for some where we can dedicate an item on youth and you can come and give an update. Obviously, which I mentioned earlier, the UNEA Delegates Handbook would be quite important. Currently, I think there is an outline available. They're talking a lot about science policy and business forum. And I think there will be a general section on major groups, obviously, but it might be good that there is a youth engagement section in the handbook, that there will be a youth assembly, or there generally is, because this is a handbook that will be circulated to member states. And, nobody likes to read a website with 100 documents. People often say that, oh, there's a handbook which is easier to read. We might, even just read that. So The current sections have UN-led stuff, but you should try asking if we can include a section on youth participation in this. The agenda item that I mentioned on MEAs, as and when this comes up, please engage on this topic, MEA alignment and MEAs agenda item in UNEA 6. Make sure that different MEA constituencies are involved in your discussion as well. So if they're trying to bring climate change, make sure the different constituencies are able to be involved as and when this discussion comes up about their MEAs. And we talked about the fixed timeline of resolutions. So if the resolutions, that they're coming 12 weeks in advance, and they would be important to schedule the youth position papers accordingly. So by July or August, you should have a position paper which already says, what do young people want out of UNEA? What are the resolutions we want? And that should be with countries, so that when they are preparing their resolutions, they are able to take your inputs into account. And this is something that we missed out a little bit on, because last year, it was COVID, and then when 2021 there was a COVID, and this timeline was not clear. So many countries came the last moment bringing resolutions, and they were like, so this is something you may want to sort of do. And then final point, of course, which we continue to mention, is that try to have forward-looking advocacy, which means that don't wait for them to table agenda items that, oh, now they will table it, so now we are going to react to it. But also make sure that in every intervention, or not every, but some intervention that you're giving, you're able to table more items. Say that, okay, we don't like how this works in UNEA, we want this improved. We don't like how this works, so we think this should be improved. So, and they listen, right? So I think that, so those are some of the points, and these are some documents that you can read in your own time, which have a lot of details on all of these processes, and also something on financial oversight and other things on how that is managed. So I'll share this PPT also in the chat, so you can have a copy of that for yourselves too. Over to you, Mario and Anomnia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gratna. Omnia, go ahead.
Yeah. So moving on to the processes of CPR meetings and how you can join them, especially that now we've heard about how important our youth voice can be in such platforms. And thus, I'm really thanking you, Gretna, for the presentation. So, Ahmed, I'll yield the floor to you for this part.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ahmed Oda. I am here to talk about the accreditation and how to be registered into the Indico. And this is very important information. So I am kindly requesting from all the participants to type plus to make sure that you are still awake, please. Pluses in the chat. Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay. So here into the UNEA meetings, how do you know about the meetings? It just simply you can search into the Google about you can write a UNEP meetings as CPR. So also through this link you will be see all future meetings and also the previous meeting that has been done. When you click in each meeting, you will see here the agenda. So you can know what actually they're gonna be discussing into the next meeting and also into the previous meetings. Sometimes there will be a records and also a documents. Next. Okay. So let's say after you saw the meeting and also you want to attend it, but you need here the accreditation letter. So because you are, so there is 3 types of the accreditation letter. One, it's coming from your member state. So when you're gonna be reaching out to your member state, or to your representative into the UNEA to give you the accreditation letter to be a part of their delegation. Or if you are in the UN or in the UN, they having some projects, so you can reach out to the UN agencies that you are working on, and they can providing you the accreditation letter. But here into the major group, we are mainly working into the NGOs because we are a civil society. So here is the list of the accredited organizations that they are allowing to enter to these meetings online and person. So in this link, you will notice that here is the list of the accredited organization. So when you're gonna be here, so you will see the major group. So because you are right now belongs into the children and youth, so you're gonna be choosing children and youth major group. So you will be seeing the list of the organizations, and you can reach out to them and says, I need so I need the accreditation letter, and they will be providing you. Or sometimes and always the major group, they are listing a Google form. So if you want to attend to one of these meetings, they're gonna be providing you the accreditation to just attend it. Next. Okay, Indico. Indico, it's online portal that can give you access to all UN meetings, events, workshops, in person, online. The first, when you go into the number one, you will see this dashboard. So you can just click into the great one if you don't have this one. Then second, it will be taking you to create a new Indico profile with your email address. Make sure that all information that you will put it into the Indico, it's correct, and please always and double check it. Okay, next slide. Okay, after you will be opening your account, you will see the dashboard here. So you will see the main categories, okay, and also you will see into the upcoming events section. So let's say if you didn't see your meetings into the upcoming events section, so you can go into the UNEP here, into the highlights of the UN agencies, and you will search into the UNEP and click on it. Next. Second, yes, no, number, yes, here. So here you can see into the highlight the UNEP. So after you click it, move. After you click into the UNEP meetings, you will see the all meetings that upcoming meetings will be happen. So here you can see the show, and then you can see the all meetings. So we can see here the CPR meetings. And after you click on this meeting, next. Number 6, yes. After you click into this meeting, you will be able to see the dashboard for this meeting, and also the documents that actually giving you if you want to be speaker or something into the CPR. So here is some guidelines, but probably when actually we are speaking, we are coordinated that with the UNEP MGCY. And we can see the C details for the registration, please. Next slide. Okay. Okay. After you are, so after you open in like into the click, so you can open into the apply. Next. For even in person or online. Then you will be choosing your representation type. So if there is a member state, accredited NGOs, and UN agencies, so probably we are going into the accredited non-governmental organizations. Next.
Ahmed, please, we're kind of out of time, so if you can summarize.
I'm just
Thanks.
finishing right now. I'm finishing. Okay. So here is into the number 9, you will be editing your information, and then you will be added your letter into the uploading the file into the letter. So after you having the accreditation letter from the NGO, so you will be editing that here. If you are attending in person, you need also to edit the COVID-19 vaccination as approved. Next. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for the presentation. I hope that the participants have learned how to register themselves in the Indico platform. So now we will move to Mariam to tell us about how to behave and act during the meeting and how we can be speakers and speak about the meeting points that we have been organizing ourselves to. So I yield the floor to you, Mariam.
Thank you, Omya. So everyone can hear me. You can just put a plus sign in the chat if you can hear me clearly. Okay. So first of all, it is very important that you name yourself in the meeting. If it is a subcommittee meeting, you are able to rename yourself, because it usually happens on Microsoft Teams, and you can name yourself as a name of NGO, then Children and Youth Major Group, and then your full name. In case of introduction platform, you are not able to rename it, and you can just move the next slide and they can see.
Next slide, please.
Yeah. So here you can see that on introduction platform, our name is going to appear like this, and it is not editable, but for the Microsoft Teams, you can edit it. So it is very important that you edit it and write the NGO name first, then the Children and Youth Major Group, and then your full name. Secondly, you have to keep yourself muted and cameras off, because it is really, really, really important in such meetings. And all the speakers who are joining us online, if they are going to speak, they turn their cameras on when they're speaking, and they turn it off back when they're done speaking. So it is really important that you keep yourself muted and cameras off just to have a good bandwidth during the meeting. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a very, very, very crucial point, common position, because we all are the part of Children and Youth Major Group, and we are a constituency. So it comes with an added responsibility. So any position, any statement which we are from any single participant, it would be interpreted and considered as a common position of the whole constituency. So it is very important that whatever statement you make, either orally or in chat, you must consult the policy coordination group beforehand, or any related working group, because it is really, whatever you say, it will be considered as the position, as a common thought of the whole constituency, of the whole global youth. So it is really important that you always consult first before making any statement. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the last from my end, and it is really, really, really important for all of you to not share the links with anyone. The links are for the registered participants only, and you are not, you have the obligation to not share it with anyone on social media, because it is for, because you are registered and you are getting it from the email, and you are not required to share it with anyone. So over to you again, Mario and Omya.
Thank you so much, Mariam. It was very interesting. So now it's the call for members who think that maybe they just joined the working group and they don't know how they can actively contribute to this process, whether they have to write statements, and it's like hectic. And yeah, it sounded as hectic in my first time. So Joshua is going to tell us how we can all contribute to this process. Over to you, Joshua.
Hi everyone, you all hear me right? All right, cool, nice. So I'll be speaking about how to meaningfully contribute to this process, and it may seem daunting at first, but trust me, the process is very simple and very easy. We're very open in this constituency, and we're happy to have you here. Apologies for not having my camera on. I'm having some technical difficulties, but hopefully that's solved through my presentation. Our next slide, please. Okay, nice. So we have 3 different things here. We have yeah, all right, thanks. Yeah. So before the CPR meeting, now as my colleague earlier spoke about, CPR meetings are where negotiations happen, including stakeholders and member states. Now, before these meetings, usually there may be 2 meetings before each CPR meeting, in which the policy coordination gather, and we use a consensus-based approach. This means that in these meetings, we have a folder of various Google documents, which open a Google Doc, and we start gaining inputs. We'd open each UNEP document and look for areas where we see deficiencies when it comes to youth involvement, or lapses in wording, or anything that we'd want to see change. And with this will then form the last part is the intervention itself. Now, intervention mainly is short documents which we present. There'll be one speaker that would present during the meeting, and this intervention will be formed from the collection of inputs from the group meeting. Next slide, please. Right. So during the drafting session, an email will be sent out, and in the email, you'll see a meeting link. During the prep meeting itself, notes to be taken. These notes are inputs as well for the intervention itself, and each input will be discussed at hand during the meeting and containing documents. However, during the drafting of the interventions, we try to keep it at maximum 300, 350 words, depending on how long the person can speak for, because normally we get speaking spots allocated about 3 to 4 minutes. So 350 words, 100 words a minute. So that's the sweet spot we go for. And that's the main thing that each intervention be made by. Additionally, normally have about we try to have as many interventions as possible, mainly 3 to 4. Or however, if we have the time, because we do respect people's time there, we may have less or more depending of there's meetings. Next slide, please. Right. And now after the meeting, at the end of the meeting, we have just a discussion on any major topic itself. We try to have a group photo, so that'll be free. We traditionally take one just for memory's sake, and a summary will be sent out to the constituency itself. And within this, so if you don't get a chance to attend the meeting, a link will be sent to the constituency from the mailing list, and in this email, a link will be found for the Google Doc, in which you can go in to edit it and add things. One more thing to be of note: if you are doing that, please use the suggestion mode so we can track changes. And then we send out also after presenting these interventions, we try to send them to secretary directly. And yeah, that's mostly it. After meeting, we just chill and relax and speak about different things and try to de-stress from the situation. Next slide, please. And now I'll pass it on to Yoko. And thanks for listening, guys. So talk about PCG that we did work we did in 2022 and now in 2023. Thanks, guys.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I hope that everyone can hear me. So I will keep this session really quick because of the time that we're running really short. So if you go to the next slide, I will be talking about the PCG last year in 2022 and 2023. So I have so this slide has all the meetings that the UMGC or UNEP has been contributed to, but not all the meetings, because the CPR meetings and derivative meetings have been held every month. And through the documents shared, it seems that the UMGC or UNEP has not attended all of them, but these are the ones that UMGC or UNEP has attended. And so as you see that, like every month, since every month until May, the UMGC or UNEP has contributed to all these meetings into the interventions and note taking. They are like separate document Google Drive, where members sign up like for every 30-minute slot, and they write down notes. And some of those notes include like what has every country said and what every country has been like said about and their positions on certain items. And yes, and as you see, there are like different type of meetings here, like the committee for permanent representative meetings, and like 157 meetings of general ones, and also the informal, open, and online consultations of UNEA, and these include clusters, different clusters of UNEA. Yes, and then if you continue on, so the ones that did not include the month are the ones that the UMGC or UNEP did not join. And if you continue on the next slide, the second half of the year, the UMGC only attended 2 of the meetings, and I believe it was because the UMGC UNEP has been really busy. Because, for example, in June we also organized the Stockholm Press Conference, and there's also like other conferences that has been really busy, and therefore I believe that's maybe part that's not really being attended by many people. And so the last meeting was in December, the 160 minutes of CPR. And then the meeting was not finished, and therefore it was postponed, it was moved. And then actually postponed, but continue on to the January. So if we continue on, so the last one was on December 8th. And then the first one for the new year 2023 is on the 19th, which is actually, in basically in a week. And so, and then right after that, almost like less than 2 weeks later, there will be a joint meeting of the Bureau of UNEA 6 and of the CPR Bureau. And so then you really be talking about the UNEA 6 and all the CPR coming up. And then these are the meetings that have been published on the website. And as time goes on, there will be more meetings post-March. And as you say, the 160 meeting of CPR was in December, and the next will be March. So it will be like also like every 3 months or so that there will be meetings of the CPR. And so after the 160 meeting of CPR, the next one will be on the March 19th. So March 9th. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoko. At this time, just to remind everyone, we're over time, so please be as short as possible. Santia, do you want to take over from here? We're now at the question and answer section segment. So if you have a question, if you're not clear, please send your questions in the chat at this point in time, or raise your hand, or put up an X in the chat. So if you have a question, you can ask questions. All right?
Yeah, sorry, I will just add on. So I did so I think there was a change on the website, and then actually the resume session will be actually tomorrow. And then some participants already registered accreditation. So yes, the actually is tomorrow. So that's for the long time I have said earlier.
Okay, thank you, Yoko. Thank you, Maria and Amaria. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing any of your names wrong. So the floor is open for anyone who has any questions. You can put them in the chat. You can open your mics. You can raise your hands or put an X or something in the chat as well, and we can take your questions. Okay, there is no questions. Interesting.
I'm sorry,
I guess
I like one.
I guess everything has been well explained by our dear presenters, so that's
I like that
great.
one thing. Yes, sir. I like that one thing. Earlier somebody asked a question in chat regarding how can they be involved individually. We spoke about the NGOs. However, most countries do have representatives to UNEP. And so if you're from a country and you want to reach out to your representative, you can try to do that. However, that will be based on your own independent work itself, and it will be linked to your constituency. We try to contribute as a constituency as a whole, because if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. So we try to be together and make these statements as impactful and powerful as possible. So that's why we submitted the constituency. So that's one thing I would like to add.
Yes, Smolin, please.
Oh,
Thank
sorry,
you,
thank
Alfo.
I was going to write that also for if anyone is interested, they can always support with the note takings. Maybe you'll share the rolling document later on. So that's also another way. If you're interested, you can always feel free to help out on that.
Yes, Karthik, we'll send. Yeah, Amnia, please.
Yeah, definitely. Like note taking is a very important step because it helps us to keep track of what has been discussed on the earlier meeting and how we can advance. And it's also important to check on the agenda of the meeting of tomorrow. Even if you haven't been registered or got your accreditation, maybe you can help the people that are going to participate by your inputs, and we'll be looking forward to that. Hand over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Omnia. I see messages in the chat. I think there was one from Alphonse who helps us with on ground. He's in Nairobi. He helps us. So I think he left a message. And then there's one from Yug who's saying that she's very happy that this happening and continuing. So yeah, great work. And if you have any questions or any feedback for the session, please feel free to take this mic or anything, the chat as well. We'll of course share all of the PPTs, the related documents, any links that was linked in this document, everything that we'll be sharing, we'll share all of those materials to the mailing list as well. And if you can always reach out to any of us for any questions or information that you require, and we'll always be here to help out. I guess maybe then if there is not many coming in, I'm going to keep the forum open for now for anyone who wants to go for questions, but maybe if we can take a picture and then people want to leave can leave, and if there are questions from people, then they can do that. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And again, like always, please turn on your cameras only if you're comfortable doing so. Don't feel pressurized because everyone's doing it. Only if your bandwidth allows it, only if you're comfortable about it. And probably we might use this for social media posts as well. So only if you're comfortable with all of that, please turn on your cameras. Do not feel pressured at any point in time to turn on your cameras. It's so nice to see people. Okay. Okay, then I'm gonna take pictures. And then I'll have to move pages because there's a lot of people. So yeah, anyway, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, please hold a minute. Okay, I have to go where is this? Sorry. Yep. Okay. My internet. It's bugging. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And I'm moving to the next page for the picture. Lots of people, which is very nice. Okay. Lots of people are also sleepy. Okay, then thank you everyone. I've taken the pictures. I'll also share them. Lots of
Thank you everyone for showing up.
yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for coming. See you over the next year. We'll have so many engagements coming up.
Thank you so much,
and
people.
just-
And thank
bye.
you to everybody who helped today.
Oh my God.
Anybody, contributors, moderators, timekeeping, note
Hi,
taking,
Megan.
people who took notes, people who presented today. All of your voluntary efforts are very well
Hey,
appreciated.
Megan.
And thank you